I'm the president of NAMI Grand Rapids area. Pretty much covers Itasca area now. We've been working hard on that, especially during the last several months. So welcome tonight. Thank you for coming on such a gorgeous fall evening. I know it's a sacrifice to not be sitting by a campfire somewhere, so much appreciated that you're here. I want to thank our partners and some NAMI members who really made this possible this evening. We've been working hard on this. Captain Dan Willis is retired, and he is an international instructor in trauma, post-traumatic stress, and the process of healing. And he's an instructor with the International Academy of Public Safety. He's the founder of the www.firstresponderwellness.com website, and he provides wellness training to first responder agencies throughout North America. For nearly 30 years, Captain Willis served as a police officer for the La Mesa Police Department near San Diego, California. He was a homicide detective for 9 years, investigating crimes of violence and cold cases, and a SWAT commander, and the developer and coordinator of the police department's wellness program. He graduated from San Diego State University with a Bachelor of Science degree in criminal justice and graduated from the FBI's National Academy for Senior Police Managers in Quantico, Virginia, where he studied emotional survival, trauma, and the process of healing. Captain Willis was La Mesa's Officer of the Year twice. Within 4 years, was nominated as Detective of the Year for the state of California and was nominated as Homicide Detective of the Year by the California Homicide Investors Association. Are you blushing yet? For 12 years, Captain Willis was an instructor for the San Diego Public Safety Institute, the county's police academy. He now travels throughout the United States and Canada, providing training to any first responder agency regarding trauma, post-traumatic stress, the process of healing, and emotional survival. He has given over 200 presentations in 28 states and Canada, and he still lives in San Diego, California. So please give a very hearty Northern Minnesota welcome to Dan Willis.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Marianne. Thank you for having me come out to God's country. Out here, it's nice to get out of California every once in a while. Went kayaking this afternoon in the Mississippi River. It's pretty cool. Pretty cool to see all the fall colors. And I know it's probably kind of on the end side, but we don't have any of that. So it's really nice to be here. I want you guys to feel comfortable to ask anything. If something comes up during the talk, you can go ahead and ask during, but if it can wait, at the end of the talk, we've designated some time. And we're going to be talking this evening about how do you get through your career, how do you support a loved one who's in a frontline or first responder career, make it to retirement and not be on your 5th marriage, not be suffering from post-traumatic stress, not being an alcoholic, not hating what you did for a living, not hating people, not suffering from all the psychological and emotional distress that really plagues this great, honored profession. And being able to look forward to the next 30, 35 years of your life, being healthy, being able to look back on your career and feeling really good about all the good you're able to do. If you do absolutely nothing from this moment on, you might make it to retirement and be perfectly fine. It's just that the odds are really stacked against you, because every single day, no matter what your job is as a frontline or medical or fire or law enforcement, anything in the criminal justice system, anything in public service, there's trauma every day. And trauma has an inherent ability to turn you into somebody your loved ones don't recognize anymore. Maybe even someone you don't recognize. And the effects of trauma are very much like a cancer. It just slowly eats away at your ability to be normal. And it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter what your background has been, whether you've been in the military, your brain, your central nervous system, your body does not get used to trauma. Now, who has the highest rates of post-traumatic stress in our society? It's the military, right? They've seen all kinds of gore and horrible stuff. You don't get used to this. And trauma is not just poisonous and toxic, it's cumulative. So I stress in the book, I'll be stressing this evening, it's absolutely essential to be practicing wellness and resilience strategies every day. Ideally, with every call for service. Every call is an opportunity to practice, to strengthen, to enhance resiliency, to enhance your wellness. Because if you're not doing anything on the proactive side, every bad call is eating away at your ability to be healthy and have a high, good quality of life. And there's a lot that you can do every day. The book has over 40 wellness strategies in there. Everything that's in the book, everything I share with you guys tonight, is just not me telling you. It's all backed by science. It's all evidence-based. And I can tell you it works because I lived it. It helped save my life, changed my career. But way beyond that, there's a lot of science behind everything. It's just that most people just kind of hope for the best. You don't get a lot of emotional survival wellness training. I don't know what it's like out here in Minnesota, but in California, in the police academy, there's 900 hours of training. Guess how many hours they get in emotional survival? 4. And then there's no other state-mandated training throughout the entire career. We just hope for the best. Right? And what's our number one cause of death every year as first responders? Suicide. Always has been, more than all the other causes of death combined. So we lose about 130, 140 peace officers every year to suicide. If any one of those 130, 140 peace officers were ever in a class like this, they might be thinking what you might be thinking. That there's absolutely nothing that could ever happen that could make me take my own life. I have way, way too much to live for. That would never happen. And every single one of them did it. And that's the power trauma can have when it shocks, injures, hijacks your brain. And the brain is so mysterious. If it becomes injured by traumas, it'll have a mind of its own. And you'll hear some stories of that this evening. And if you don't know there's a way to heal, you don't know there's a way to recover, and you think you're losing your mind, your life's kind of spiraling out of control, you can't sleep, you can't feel normal, you can't be normal, you can't control your thoughts, you can't control your emotions, you can lose hope really fast. Especially, most importantly, if you work at an agency or a place that doesn't have mechanisms of support for you, where you feel comfortable going up and saying, hey, boss, something's going on inside I don't like. I might need some help. That's not that hard to say, right? Something's going on inside I don't like. I might need some help. Not saying that kills more of us than anything else, by far. The fear of what's going to happen to me kills so many of us because we don't know how the agency is going to respond. So this job, your job as a frontline person, as a first responder, can not only injure your brain, cause post-traumatic stress and a myriad of other psychological and emotional problems and distress, it can kill you through suicide. The actions of an agency, or the lack of action, or a perceived indifference, a perception of a lack of support, kills a lot of our people because they don't know where to go. So this evening we're going to be talking about what you can do for yourself, some ideas of what you can do within your agency to create those mechanisms of wellness from the first day of work until retirement, what you can do to help each other, because again, doing nothing is kind of like Russian roulette, especially in this profession. So I'll just tell you a little bit about my career so you guys know my background. So So most of my career before I started promoting was in investigations, doing crimes of violence, sexual assaults, and child molest, homicide, SWAT commander, wellness unit coordinator. Now I worked one child molest case where this child molester had 700 photos on his computer of kids being sexually assaulted. Now out of those 700 pictures, I have completely forgotten 699 of them. There's one that's been just kind of branded in my brain. I'm looking at it right now, crystal clear. I can see every detail of a 6-month-old being sodomized and all kinds of stuff. And that was about 28, 29 years ago. We all are going to have experiences that are going to stay with us. There's nothing you can do about that. Now, sometimes horrible, horrific, traumatic things are going to happen as part of the job. It's not really what's important. What's important is how you choose to respond to it. And having that conscious intention of not allowing something bad to destroy your life. Because you can come home one day and say, something really bad happened. I'm not okay right now. I will be. I'm not right now. What can I do about this? How can I make sure I'm eating, I'm getting good sleep, I'm exercising, I'm talking about what happened, working through it. When we don't get over anything, you find ways to work through it and respond to them in positive and constructive ways. The more that we can do that, the more that we can teach that to our people that work for us, healthier the organization is going to be. The more lives we're going to save. Worked another case where this guy got taken up to Compton, and that's in south central Los Angeles, about 120 miles north of my city. La Mesa is just east of San Diego. And he got murdered, got his head and hands cut off. And that case took 7 years for me to solve. Eventually I got 2 brothers who were Compton Creek gang members convicted of murder. But that case took so many years to solve and was really so hard on me and took so much out of me. Because, well, first of all, we never did find the head or hand. It was back in 1992. We never did find the murder scene. We have no idea where this guy got killed. We have no idea where he got cut up. They just dumped his body in an alley once they were done with him. We never had about the head, we never had a cause of death, never had a murder weapon, never had a confession or an admission by the suspects, never had a witness to the murder, never had a witness to the dismemberment. That was before DNA, so we had no DNA evidence at all, no fingerprint, no physical evidence of the suspect. And towards the end of that case, my life got threatened by one of the suspects. If you get threatened by somebody you already know cut off someone's head, kind of take that seriously, right? My agency found out I was being followed around by one of the accomplices. I came home one day and a neighbor said, "Hey, are you selling your house?" Some guy was walking around and taking pictures of it. And I was married at the time, had 2 little stepgirls. And I can tell now, looking back, but at the time I really had no idea. During that time period, how work affected me, probably more than anything else, was becoming what I call emotionally dead. Or just kind of numb to life. Becoming more and more isolated, more and more uninvolved with people and activities. Just a general disengagement with life, being disinterested in most things. Just a general lack of caring. Cared about work. That was about it. That's all I thought about. But not a whole lot else. But that's not a healthy place to be. And I know what I'm sharing with you guys tonight, what's in the book, works, because I was able to pull myself out of that. Despite all the horrible things that happened to me throughout my career, I look forward to going into work every day for 30 years. One of my first thoughts every morning, and I've been out of it for 8 years, as soon as I wake up, is I wish I was still a cop. These are such great, great and honored professions. I think sometimes we, with all the bad stuff, we lose sight of what it means to serve your country and serve your community, to be the good amidst all the bad, to protect life and to serve people. There's a lot of honor in that. You are the only reason why America doesn't look like Afghanistan. The first responders, the caregivers. You've got to be healthy to do that. In your heart, your mind, your body, and your spirit, or you're not going to be any good to anybody. During that same time period, another case I worked, this woman in her mid-20s got reported missing. It took 4 years to solve. Eventually I was able to prove this guy killed her. I don't know where he killed her. Don't know how he killed her. Don't know why he killed her. Don't know what he did with her afterwards. Never found her body or any part of it. Never had a murder scene or a witness to the murder. No DNA, no confession. That was one of the first no-body murder convictions in San Diego County history. And last case I'll tell you about, I got a child molester convicted 27 years after the crime. 35-year-old man molesting an 8-year-old boy repeatedly over a 3-month period. And at the time, I thought that was the longest time from a crime to a conviction in San Diego County history. So you, all the people working with you or for you, are all going to work some really traumatic, tough, hard cases that can tend to consume your life and really upset your work-life balance. So we should really love these great jobs, this great profession, but you should love your life a whole lot more. In order to do that, you've got to be able to be healthy enough to keep your priorities straight, to prove to the people closest to you daily that they are the most important people in your life by what you do, not by what you say. And keeping things in a proper perspective. You've got to stay healthy to be able to do that. So in 2010, my agency sent me to the FBI National Academy for 10 weeks, where I studied in part emotional survival. The book kind of came out of that experience, which really changed my career, changed my life in many ways. And that's what I want to share with you guys this evening. Hopefully giving you some ideas, some tools that I really wish I had in 1985 when I was a 21-year-old kid and put myself through the police academy. Because it would have saved me a lot of heartache. But hopefully we can help prevent a lot of heartache and heal a lot of heartache. What we discuss and how these professions are evolving. We're a whole lot better now than when we were back in 1985, right? But there's just so much more that we need to go and do. So what is wellness? Part of these concepts we want to be talking about tonight, I want you to really try to expand what you currently think of in some of these terms. Most people, when you think of wellness, they think of being physically fit, not being injured, being healthy, being strong. But it's really much, much more than that. Wellness is being fit and resilient and well, mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. And spiritual wellness, we'll talk about that in just a second, is the foundation for all of that. And it's often the most neglected. So science has shown these 4 components that make you human beings, that make you good first responders, mental, emotional, physical, spiritual wellness, they're all interrelated and interdependent upon each other. So if all you are doing is working out all the time and you're in great physical shape, but you're really not doing anything daily for your mind, for your heart, for your inner spirit, eventually that physical fitness is going to start to falter. Likewise, if you are not emotionally well and fit, if you are depressed, often if you're stressed out, full of anxieties, distress, eventually that's going to affect your immune system. You're going to be more likely to acquire an illness or even a disease. If you're not mentally resilient and fit, and the 2 ways to build mental resilience daily, which we'll talk about later, is mindfulness meditation and being present, being in the present moment. But if you're not mentally fit, if you're not able to take into account the potential consequences of what you're about to do, if you can't make rational decisions and use good judgment consistently and be reasonable, you're going to do things that are going to really affect your emotions, which ultimately is going to affect your physical health. So if you're not spiritually well, again, the foundation for all of this. We can first look at spiritual wellness backwards. What does it look like when somebody's not spiritually fit? See if you guys have anyone in your agency, your workplace, that sounds like this. completely selfish, ego-driven, not compassionate. They don't care about anything except themselves. Just kind of jaded, cold, detached from people and things. They don't care about the organization, really. That is not a healthy place to be. Spiritual wellness is your capacity to love, to serve people selflessly, to do good, to be able to consistently affirm the good within you, to be compassionate and caring, to be able to be driven by your heart every day with the desire and will to make a meaningful difference, to help, to be useful, to be kind, to be able to maintain close, meaningful relationships. That's spiritual wellness. If you're not practicing that daily, that's when you can become that jaded, uncaring, cold, distant, isolated person. When we talk about resilience, most people think about just the ability to bounce back, which of course it is, but it's also much more than that. It's developing that conscious intention to choose to respond to a challenge, to trauma, to a struggle, in a way that's going to foster greater resilience, in a constructive way, instead of just reacting to something instinctively. Bad stuff is going to happen. Right? Before you react, there's always, even if it's just a minute part of a second, there's always a space in between stimuli. Something happened, and what you do about it. So within that space, if you can learn to take a second and think about what's the best way to react to this? What good can I do right here in this moment? How can I be helpful and useful? How can I respond to this? Instead of just reacting instinctively, you're going to be building resilience every day, hopefully with every call for service. Now, I'm not a psychologist. I'm just a cop with a lot of really unique experiences, being in the field now for 38 years. But psychologists will probably tell you, other than love, probably the most basic human need is to be useful. People need to feel useful and needed. When they don't, those are kind of those lost souls. They're just kind of adrift. They have no purpose in life. Not a lot going good in their life. How you guys fulfill that basic human need every day of being useful and being helpful and doing as much good as you can is going to determine the quality of your life and of your career. And that's totally within your control of what you do. So just the tip of the iceberg, the stats show that for every suicide in the first responder frontline community, there's at least 1,000 coworkers that are suffering post-traumatic stress. So that works out to be about 120 to 140,000 peace officers going to work every day. Most of them have no idea what they have. They just know they can't sleep. They can't get these images out of their head. They can't feel normal. They can't be normal. They're scared to death. They have all kinds of anxieties and distress. And that's the person that's enabling you to go home safe every night. That's the person that we're expecting to go out in the community and protect life. Right? How efficient, how professional, how ethical, how effective can you be when you are suffering like that and struggling? In this profession, we're about twice as likely to become alcoholics. I'm not here to tell you guys not to drink, but if you're drinking because you feel you need to, I need to relax, I need to unwind, I need to forget, I need to get 2 or 3 hours of rest before my next 12-hour shift, then it's a major, major problem. Or if it's ever caused any problem in your personal life, or if you drink when you say you're not going to, if you drink more than you say you're going to, The answer is yes to any of those. It's a major problem. There's a stat that says if you have symptoms of post-traumatic stress, and the problem is most people who have, I call it PTSI, because it's really an injury to your brain, it's not a mental disorder. Most people don't know what they have. But if you have symptoms of post-traumatic stress and you drink, the chances that you're going to kill yourself goes up 10 times. Not just 2 times, which is 100%, 10 times, 1,000%. My opinion, the 2 worst things we do to ourselves in this profession is isolate yourself, become more and more reclusive and distant, uninvolved, and drink. 40% of us have serious sleep disorders. That's a study of 5,000 peace officers by the Harvard School of Medicine. So we need to sleep 7 to 8 hours every day. Who does that every day? All of us? You actually do? You do? Are you guys currently first responders? No? What about you? First responders are frontline workers that sleep 8 hours every night. This study found out that on average, we sleep, guess how many hours a day? 4 to 5. 4 to 5. Your brain cannot function on 4 hours of sleep consistently, long term. We'll talk about sleep later when we talk about EMDR, the most effective way to heal from traumas and post-traumatic stress. The reason why sleep is so vital is when you're in REM sleep, really deep, deep sleep, that's the one part of the 24-hour day when that processing part of your brain, which can become injured by trauma, is most active and doing its job, and trying to work through all your experiences and your traumas and trying to work through them and file them away in your memory, hopefully without all the distressing emotions and dark thoughts. That's when that happens. So if you're not getting consistent, good, deep sleep, longer than 4 hours a night, your brain is never getting a chance to catch up. So it's becoming more and more vulnerable to suffer that injury. I'm sure you've all had a computer that just started not working right, started slowing down, takes forever to download something, might just freeze up on you. So what do? You just shut it off and reboot it, right? When it comes back on, it typically just recalibrates itself, and once it's rebooted, it's kind of working fine now. Well, that's what can happen with your brain from either one or a few critical incidents, or much more likely an accumulation of our daily work traumas. It can build up to the point where the processing part of your brain just shuts down like the computer. And it says, I'm done. A lot of people have told me that post-traumatic stress, I said, my brain is stuck. It's like it couldn't do anything. When they go to something like EMDR and they get healed, they get better, my brain got unstuck. It's working. Well, it got rebooted. Raise your hand if you know someone who has had EMDR done. EMDR stands for eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing. So keep it up if you know somebody, either yourself or somebody else who's had it done. Keep your hand up if it was helpful. So not one hand went down. We're going to talk more about EMDR later tonight, and it's in the book as well. There's lots of treatments for post-traumatic stress and for severe traumas, but by far this is the most effective and powerful. I've had it done myself. An issue that bothered me off and on for 25 years. 25 years. Whenever that memory got triggered, it went away after 2 sessions. I could think about it, I could talk about it, remember all the details, but all the bad, dark emotions and everything are entangled in that memory. I just have the memory. So it's a treatment with just relatively few sessions, a dozen or less, more likely than not. People are either getting healed or they're at least being able to manage their symptoms and get control of their life again. Just a relatively few sessions. The tragedy is, as I go around the country, well over 80 to 90% of everyone from chiefs on down have never heard of the most effective way to heal from trauma, EMDR, which has been around for 30 years. It's nothing new. It's not hypnosis. It's not anything weird. It works. It is powerful. And once your brain resolves something, that issue is not going to be a problem. You might have other problems, other traumas, other things you need to get resolved. But more likely than not that one. It's been rebooted, it's been resolved. It's done. So we'll talk later on about EMDR, how to find a local EMDR trauma professional. You guys have several right here in the Grand Rapids area. I looked it up last night when I came into town. And that we really should be seeing an EMDR trauma professional once a year as a form of maintenance and prevention. Just like you should go to a medical doctor. Make sure you don't have cancer, make sure your heart's okay. Again, we'll get into that later on. Do whatever you need to do other than drinking to get good sleep. I don't sleep very well when I travel, so I take melatonin. It's all natural. There's no side effects or anything like that. For me, I literally am asleep within 10 minutes, and I tend to be asleep all night. If I do happen to wake up to go to the bathroom, I'm out within 5 to 10 minutes. I used to take Benadryl, just an antihistamine over the counter. Did that for years. I don't do it anymore because I read something that said it might have some long-term consequences, potentially. That's when I switched to melatonin. But do something. Help your brain out so you can help yourself. You've got to get good sleep. 25 to 30% of us will have at least one serious stress-based health problem at some point in your career. Diabetes is killing us. In this profession, heart disease, digestive disorders, stomach problems, respiratory disorders, certain forms of cancer, even. If you're not doing something, hopefully daily, to work through the traumas and process them in constructive ways, the traumas you're experiencing every day have to come out somehow, eventually. It might come out in depression, it might come out in anxiety disorder, it might come out in a sleep disorder, it might come out in a disease, it might come out in panic attacks, it might come out 5-10 years into your retirement out of the blue. It's got to come out somehow. That's why it's so important to practice this stuff every day. About 20% of first responders will have at least one serious addiction at some point in their career. If your brain becomes injured by traumas, you become very, very susceptible to acquire all kinds of addictions. It's just kind of the way for the brain to cope with kind of dealing with repetitive behavior. It kind of calms down when we start doing something repetitive. Just most repetitive things we do in this profession aren't very healthy. So some of the people that you're working with or supervising have all these things going on. How effective are they out in the community? Raise your hand if you're the same person you were when you got hired as a first responder or a frontline person. Is there anyone whose job has not negatively affected you? So I have trained now about 8,000, probably closer to 9,000 peace officers. I have yet to have one who seriously says that the job has not negatively affected me. So I won't ask you to share, but just think to yourself all the different ways this job has affected your life. It's affected your sleep, your view of people, your view of the profession, your relationships at home, your peace, your overall well-being, your fulfillment in life, on and on and on. I had a Long Beach police officer in Southern California share that how he's been changed. He says, I now have to make a conscious effort to be nice to my 7-year-old son. I have to keep reminding myself he's not a little, this is his words, he's not a little crook. You know, he's my boy. Pay attention to him, spend some time with him, play with him. This is his exact word. He said, I have to make myself because it doesn't come natural anymore. So that's pretty significant, right? And what's happening to his son with that distance from dad as he's growing up? So not only can we become a victim of this great profession, so can your kids, your spouse, your life partner, everyone we influence because of how we might change over the years, by what we might bring home. So some of you might be thinking, wow, I'm like that. Or I've got some problems at home because of work and what I've taken back. Again, That's great that you're aware of it. First step in being well is becoming more self-aware. It doesn't really matter what you've done or mistakes you've made. Right? What matters is what you do from this moment on to make it right. I had a Nebraska officer after a class come up, and probably one of the saddest guys I've ever seen. He had tears in his eyes and his mopey face, and he goes, I was just sitting in the back of the class listening to you all afternoon, kind of reviewing my whole career, and I just realized just how terrible I've treated my wife and kids. Like he had no idea. And I wasn't expecting that. I kind of took that in for a second, and I smiled at him. I said, you know what? That's great. Because look at all the things you can do from this moment on to make it right. And he kind of smiled and nodded and walked on. And that's what being well and fit is all about. It's not what happened to you, but what you can do about it. And choosing to respond in ways that are going to foster wellness and greater peace and fulfillment. So what is trauma? Most people in our profession, when they hear the word trauma, they think of the really bad stuff. The riot, the shooting, the fight for your life, right? Yeah, all those things are really traumatic. Think about all the other things that you guys do every day that you don't think is traumatic. It's just part of the job that you think you get used to. How many suicides can you go to? How many dead kids, sick kids, dying kids, broken kids, neglected kids, molested kids? How many high-speed pursuits? How many dangerous situations? How many fights for your life? How many times can you get your life threatened? How many child molest cases can you investigate? How many sexual assaults? How many acts of violence? How many instances of dealing with people's horrific suffering that they either caused themselves or been victimized by somebody else? How many of those experiences can you have until your brain just kind of says, you know what, that's kind of too much. And that's the injury. And then the symptoms start to appear. Symptoms of post-traumatic stress are being affected by trauma. Sleep is usually the first thing that goes. Having problems sleeping. Maybe having anxieties, inner distress, having uncontrollable thoughts, maybe having nightmares, having interrupted sleep, early morning wake up, inability to fall back to sleep, being depressed, being irritated all the time. It's one of the big ones. Angry, just angry. No matter what, you're just always angry. That's a major red flag. Being uncaring, distant, callous. My ex-wife would say, you're here, but you're not here. What's that supposed to mean? But she was right. Physically, I was there, but I was checked in, doing whatever, just trying to get ready for the next 12-hour shift, not connected to her or to the kids or anything else. So trauma is any experience that has the potential to affect you in a seriously negative way over a long period of time. Think about that definition. Think about all the things you guys see day in and out that fall under that. Any experience that has the potential to affect you in a seriously negative way over a long period of time. That's how trauma differentiates from stress. Stress, you're in the middle of something, your heart rate spikes, you deal with it, you calm back down, and it's kind of over, you move on. Well, with trauma, it's not over. And it can start causing problems months or even years afterwards. So any experience that has the potential to affect you in a seriously negative way over a long period of time. You guys deal with that every single day. And even though we think we get used to it, your brain, your central nervous system, your body does not get used to trauma. You can work through it, you can process it, you can release it, you can respond to it in positive, constructive, meaningful ways, but you don't get used to it. And this is how it affects your brain. That processing part of your brain, by the way, most people in our profession who have post-traumatic stress, they were never in a horrific thing, they were never in a shooting. Most cops who have it were in a shooting. Probably 80–90% of peace officers will never fire their gun in a 3-year career. They're just doing your job day in and day out. Because it's toxic and it's cumulative. So daily traumas can build up to the point when that processing part of your brain just kind of shuts down. When that happens, the primitive part of your brain that deals with fight or flight or freeze, that's what kicks in those situations and helps you to survive. That will tend to overact all the time. So you could feel like you're in a fight for your life with all the anxiety and fear and panic and terror, maybe and pain, distress, even though you're sitting at home on your sofa all alone watching TV. And you're feeling all that, just raging up. And it doesn't shut up. It just keeps racing like that all the time, producing this kind of emotion. The part of your brain that deals with communication and feelings and emotions, you'll see this in a brain scan too. That'll just tend to shut down. So you do things like my ex-wife said I did. Talk in 1 or 2 word sentences. I didn't do that when I met her. Or you're just calloused. You're emotionally dead. You don't feel things anymore. You can't talk, you can't communicate effectively. And the part of your brain that deals with being rational and using logic and reason tends to shut down too. So people with post-traumatic stress can tend to do the most bizarre, strange stuff that they would have never thought of before. Because their brain isn't right. And often, because I've seen this many times, especially with police, somebody will do something, and boom, they're fired, they're gone, without ever looking into what could have caused that, what could have contributed to that. Is there a way we can try and save this person? Is there a path for them to heal and be able to come back and be well? I read an article when I came in last night about a firefighter who got post-traumatic stress, and after 7.5 months he got terminated because they hadn't cleared him of being fit fully, come back full duty, so they terminated him. And he's suing his city. In the same city, there's a police detective of 19 years who had done child molest for over 10 years. He got post-traumatic stress. He did the right thing. He put in for it. He got it approved as a workers' comp thing caused by work. And he got terminated. I'm not sure how long his went. It was definitely less than a year. Think about what systems you guys have in your agency or your workplace. There are a lot of people who are severely depressed. There's a lot of people that might have suicide ideation. Doesn't mean they can't work. They might need some time to get better. But you can recover from that. You can heal from that. They say there's about 20% of Americans who are depressed. We're not losing 60 million people to suicide every year. When we make decisions as an agency because we should do this because that might happen. What if he goes off and does that? Well, do something to prevent that. Have a path for someone to come back. In California, you have a year from either a physical or a psychological injury to be declared full duty, come back. I mean, you can't have it open-ended forever, but you have a year. Right? In a lot of places, it's just very arbitrary. It's whatever the agency thinks. I don't know, how much longer should we give this guy? He's been out for 5 or 6 months. Let's just cut our losses. Is that how we should treat our people who devoted their life to public service? So think about what changes you can make at your workplace that will answer the question that is in every single one of the people that work in your agency's mind. What's going to happen to me? If I come forward, if I say I might need some help, am I going to lose my gun? Am I going to lose my job? Am I going to have desk duty for the rest of my career? Am I going to get fired? Right? They're going to think the worst if they don't have the answer of what's going to happen to me. So whatever you can do as colleagues, as supervisors and managers to help answer that question, well, this is what's going to happen. Right? In worst case scenario, if you can't work, you have a year or whatever to get back to full duty. And this is how we're going to help get you whole again. Treat it just like if the officer got run over or broke his arm during a fight. I mean, you're not going to make that officer feel like he did something wrong, right? You're not going to make them feel like it's their fault that somebody turned their car and purposely ran him down. You're going to give that officer time to heal. You're going to support them. You're going to have a path for them to be able to come back and return to work. That's got to be exactly the same for an internal invisible injury. Often those are much more serious because you can't see them. But there are ways for them to recover and heal. In most cases, not all, but far more than is being recognized now. So that scan on the left, that's a perfectly normal functioning brain. The one on the right is one that's been injured by traumas. I don't know how clear that is for you guys on a big screen like that, but on the one on the right, there's a lot of dark brown, almost orange spots that are all over that entire brain. There's basically none of it on the well-functioning brain. If there's just one minor alteration in the physiology of your brain, that's going to have major, major repercussions in how you control your life and the quality of your life. The good news is that injured brain on the right that's got changes physiologically all over it can be rebooted and restored to a normal, healthy, functioning brain, especially with EMDR. So this first video, I'm just going to play about 2.5 minutes of it. It actually goes on for 45 minutes, just like the first 2 minutes. I'm trying to think of the most traumatic incident that I have access to show you guys so I can relate it to what you do, no matter what your job is as a frontline caregiver or first responder, and relate it to your work. So this is a 1997 North Hollywood bank robbery. 2 bank robbers walked into the Bank of America. They had body armor from head to toe. They had AK-47s. They had thousands of rounds of ammunition. And they ended up getting in a 45-minute running gun battle with the cops. They're just spraying the streets, cars driving by. 11 officers got shot. Imagine working a scene, responding to a scene when you have 11 cops seriously wounded, bleeding out on the street. After the bad guys fired over 1,000 rounds of ammunition. At the end of the 45 minutes, the only 2 dead people ended up being the bank robbers. All the 11 shot officers survived. But while you're looking at this and listening to the radio traffic for just the first 2 minutes, think about what do you have in your personal life that would help you recover from something like that? What do you have in your agency that would help an officer or dispatcher recover from that? Not just immediately, but long term. Those people are going to need help probably for the rest of their life, or at least support. And what can you have? What can you create? What mechanisms of support and wellness can you create from recruitment to retirement to help people be able to deal with even something this severe and make it and be okay eventually?
There you go.
So that's just 2.5 minutes. So imagine that for 45 minutes straight. What do you have in place to deal with that? Personally, and within your agency? Yes, ma'am.
I have a quick question. I work in mental health. Did they ever find out why they brought that much ammunition with them? Because that'd be cumbersome, you could carry less other money away. Like what was going on in airframes to make them.
I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
It's almost like they had a death wish, right? But
Yeah, it's a very strange way to rob a bank, to take more stuff with you too.
or that was the biggest insurance policy they could think of. Right? If I have body armor from the top of my head to my feet, and I have 1,000 rounds of ammunition, there's no way I'm going to get caught. Start thinking like that. Any other questions about that? The point I want to drive home after watching that is, chances are, you are never going to experience something that traumatic. You might. Maybe some of you in here already have. But just the percentages, the odds are, you're not likely to experience something that horrific. But every single person in this room, every frontline caregiver, every first responder will experience that amount of trauma, along with its associated, potentially crippling effects throughout the course of their career. It's just not likely to be condensed in one horrific 45-minute incident. It's just nicely spread out throughout your whole career. Over 20 and 30 years. Another dead kid, another fatal car collision that took out a whole family, another suicide, another fight for your life, on and on and on. That collectively are going to affect you just as much as that. Given a choice, I think I'd rather be involved in that and get it over with. Because when you're just having daily, smaller doses of trauma over 20 and 30 years, nobody notices. Especially not you. We tend to be the last to know. Because the changes from trauma can happen so gradually, you kind of get used to the changes and not know you're changing. Until, like my ex-wife, when you come home one day and you're not the person I married. It's kind of too late at that point. The other thing trauma does is eat away at your ability to be resilient. This is a real short video of somebody who lost the ability to be resilient. So imagine if this is an armed police officer and he's trying to arrest, or she, trying to arrest someone, and they pull away, maybe they start fighting, maybe they start mouthing off to the person, and they just snap. Think of all the bad stuff that can happen. You guys got anyone at your workplace like that? That any little thing, and they can just go off? Angry, angry, angry all the time. Just a short fuse. Look at the damage that guy caused in about 15 seconds with his bare hands. All because somebody stuffed a trash can a little bit too tight. He didn't have a gun. He didn't have a metal baton. He didn't have a taser with 50,000 volts. He didn't have handcuffs. Didn't have chemical agents. Just bare hands. Think of all the bad stuff that we see on the news. Excessive use of force, shootings that maybe was excessive because somebody couldn't respond and they just instinctively reacted, without thinking. And then we're left to pick up the pieces afterwards and try to mend things with the community, sometimes for years. The really good news about resilience is it's very much like physical fitness. The more that you practice it and exercise it, hopefully daily, the stronger and stronger it gets. The more that you ignore it, just like your physical fitness, the more it will tend to deteriorate over time, especially in this profession and what we deal with. So even somebody that far gone, he could gain back a healthy, normal resilience. You just have to work at it and build it back up. We're going to see a video in just a second exactly how to do that. Very specific strategies to gain resiliency every day. There are just some ideas within an agency that you can do. There's a whole chapter in the book about creating a wellness program within your department, being proactive about it. Most wellness, peer support and things are set up to be reactive. You know, you're there, there's a problem, it kicks in and usually does a pretty good job supporting the person. But the best peer support, the best wellness initiatives are proactive. You're not just waiting for something to happen. You're looking ahead. You're constantly asking yourself, what more can we do? What do our people need? How can we be more responsive to our colleagues? And implement them, right? Always trying to be ahead of the curve and being proactive. Chaplains are worth their weight in gold. To have a really effective peer support team, I think you really need to have a chaplain. There's a whole chapter in the book about finding a good chaplain, how to do that, and all the great services they can provide to your agency. We should be encouraging our people to go to an EMDR trauma professional once a year. And if you can, try to incentivize that. Maybe give them 5 hours of time off on the books, or 10 hours of time off on the books, because they went for their prevention and maintenance trauma professional checkup for the year. I think over time, that's something that's going to be mandatory. Right? Anyone in our profession are probably going to have to, sooner or later, go to a trauma professional once a year. It's just going to take enough chiefs and sheriffs tired of losing 140 peace officers every year to suicide. In the meantime, why not be on the proactive side of it and encourage it? Do it yourself. Talk to the other people in your agency. Talk to them about EMDR when you learn about it tonight. Defusings and debriefings, physical fitness program. If you can incentivize that, give people time off of the books for how good a shape they're in. There's ways to do that. The book goes into all that. All right, so I write about character-based service, because we really need to have some kind of a guidepost to safely maneuver through all the inevitable traumas of these professions. And the most effective guidepost there is, the number one lesson I learned more than anything else in 30 years in law enforcement, is that this truly is a vocation of the heart. Protecting life and serving people and being the good amidst all the bad in compassionate and meaningful ways is a vocation of the heart. Well, if you're not putting your heart in this job every day, trying to make a meaningful difference in your agency, to make it more responsive, to make it more professional, to make a difference with your colleagues, to help them, support them, look out for them, to make a difference in the community, then the job is going to eat you alive. Or at least it has the great potential to do that with every bad call, day after day. And that's the one thing that I have experienced, and the science backs up, that helps turn that around and work through the traumas. It's kind of like this. Can you imagine this screen blank with a line divided in half right down the middle? And let's say on the left side is a list of every bad, distressing, traumatic, terrible, heartache experience you had because of work. And on the right side is a list of every good, positive, compassionate, useful, helpful thing you try to do to make a difference. For just one thing on the right, it just tends to erase a lot of the bad stuff on the left. That's just how your brain works. It's just how God wired us up. Every good, positive, effective thing you do helps work through, helps keep you motivated, helps keep you inspired, helps fulfill that need of being useful, helps fulfill a purpose that you have in going to work every day. It does all that. Trying to do as much good as you can day in and day out, and affirming the good within you. Anyone ever heard of Albert Schweitzer? Albert Schweitzer, it's written of him that he was probably one of the most admired men of the 20th century. And his life is a really good example of what a difference one person can make in countless lives. and how just a seemingly insignificant event can totally change someone's life for the good. So Schweitzer died in early 1960s. He lived on the border of France and Germany. And by the time he was 30, he had 3 doctorate degrees already. This was a brilliant man. He was a author. He was a university professor. He was a theologian. He was a professional organist. All these things by the time he was 30. And he happened to read a magazine from Paris one day, written by some missionaries in Africa. And it was talking about the devastation of tropical diseases and how it just ravaged the human body, and how the Africans in this part of equatorial Africa were just dying at such a young age and suffering terribly, with no hospitals, no medicine, no doctors, nothing. So Schweitzer reads this, and because of that, he decides to put himself through medical school. Becomes not just a doctor, he becomes a surgeon. Then he becomes an expert in tropical diseases with the sole intent of going to equatorial Africa to try to help those people. He ended up building several hospitals. Many of them still are in operation today. Being a doctor to people, probably never even heard of a doctor before. He saved thousands of lives. And this is one of his more famous quotes that I love because it matches perfectly with the mission and purpose of your work. That the purpose of life, and as a first responder, as a caregiver, purpose is to serve and to do good, to have the will and compassion to help others. And those of us who will be truly happy and fulfilled are those who have found out how to serve. How to serve is being selfless and driven to help as much as you can and being useful. When we become disconnected from that core purpose of life in our profession, then you become very, very vulnerable to suffer from all the traumas that you're going to see day in and day out. These are the scientific proven benefits of doing just that, doing as much good as you can and being useful. It will reduce your stress levels, help you to feel better about yourself and at work, feel good. It'll increase and strengthen your resilience. It'll increase your motivation, your job interest, your job satisfaction. It will enhance your overall mental, emotional, and physical health. It will enhance your survivability. It will lessen depression. It will lessen anxieties. And it will increase your ability to connect and to relate to people. So take a look at this list. Everything that your job, day in and day out, is slowly eroding, serving with that purposeful intent to make a difference and do as much good as you can, is adding to, is replenishing, is strengthening. That's why it needs to be a daily practice, because every day it's being eroded. All right, so I want to just go over a couple of scenarios. Before I came out, I got some messages from people of some of the things that you guys in this community have experienced. They go, well, what do we do when these things come up? When you have a child's death, especially when maybe you have a similar age child at home, that's trauma. Right? That's got the potential to affect you in a seriously negative way over a long period of time. A couple things. In all of these scenarios, the tendency when bad stuff happens, sometimes is just kind of circle the wagons, and in a sense, unknowingly, we kind of let it traumatize us, instead of kind of standing up and thinking, okay, this was really bad, but what good can I do about it? And when you do that and ask yourself that, your intuition is going to guide you. It's going to give you some ideas. You're going to be able to actually be doing something about the bad instead of just letting the bad take you down. So, when we experience trauma, often we can lose sight of all the good in our life. No matter how bad things get, you have far more good than negative. And sometimes it's just helpful to remind yourself of all the good that you have when bad things are happening. Spend some time, some added time with your kids. Maybe take a day off or two and and take your similarly aged child someplace and do something special with them. Talk with people. Right? We're notorious for not talking in this profession. Right? When you say something to somebody, you kind of cut your problem in half. Kind of an old cliche, but it's true. You'll find someone you can trust that you can actually talk to and say, hey, I'm kind of bothered by this. Participate in stress management debriefs, if that's something your agency offers. And if not, try and set something up. The book will tell you how to do that in one of the chapters. Anything to choose constructively a response instead of letting this terrible situation kind of eat you alive. What if you're on staff and a family member or somebody that you know, since this is such a small community, comes in with a serious illness or maybe even dies or something? Think of what mechanisms of support you have within your workplace that you can utilize. Is there a chaplain? Is there a peer support? If not, what can you do to get it started? Again, is there someone that you can talk to instead of just keeping it inside? Instead of thinking and being all about how that's affecting you, ask yourself, well, what do my colleagues need? Maybe they need some help. I know I do. They got to too. And again, when you're feeding that basic need of being useful, it's helping yourself. Follow up with the family. Right? If you know a family, one of the family members got brought in your hospital, whatever, and died, or seriously ill, check in with them. Follow up with them. When something really bad happens, you will remember what people said and did to you about that incident for the rest of your life. For those of you that are involved in a shooting or something really traumatic, think about that. What people said to you about that, you are never going to forget. Good and bad. So knowing that, you make a conscious intention to make sure it's good. Your actions and your response. Knowing that this person is never going to forget how you reached out to them, how you followed through, how you remembered them. And that's going to help yourself. What if you have all these hopeless alcoholics, drug addicts, mentally ill, psychotics coming in, you see constantly often the same people day after day after day? Right? You can always focus on the dignity of the person, right? And treat them accordingly. I know I've seen a lot with officers where, and I won't tell you about all the descriptions I hear of officers describing people like this, but they're human beings. And sometimes caregivers, first responders, we are here to help to protect life and take care of people who are sometimes too stupid or too doped out or too drugged out or too mentally ill to help themselves. That's what we're here for. We treat them with the dignity that they have as a human being and doing something good about it. Using the momentum of a negative experience as motivation to do good. Not enough inpatient resources. In hospitals, medical clinics and stuff here, you're boarding mental health patients in ERs for days and days instead of where they really should be. Focus on what you can control. Is there anything that you can start to network? Try to help change the situation. Most really good, meaningful, helpful things that ever happened was because usually one person or one or two persons got together and said, what can we do about this? Instead of just ruminating about it over and over and over again. Learning to let go of those things that you can't control. Because when we don't do that, it's going to just eat you alive. And you're going to expend a lot of precious energy. What about recent accidents resulting in first responder deaths? I understand your community has had a couple recently. Think about not just the immediate, but the long-term follow-up. Usually we do a pretty good job taking care of people when something really bad happens. Then we usually do a really bad job at long-term follow-up. My peer support team, my agency, has this master calendar. And on the anniversary date of officer shootings and really, really bad stuff, the anniversary date of those things are written down with the people's names who were involved. And about a week before the anniversary of that incident, someone from peer support will go in and just check in with the person. Hey, how you doing? This is probably going to be a pretty tough week for you. Just want to let you know we're thinking about you. We're here for you if you need something. They're never going to forget that. It took like 15 seconds to say. And that's that long-term follow-up and checking in with people. Right? You don't have to tell them, hey, this is the anniversary date of your shooting. Trust me, they know that. Just reach out to people. Critical incident stress management debriefs, evidence is shown if they're done properly, does a lot to help everyone involved kind of process what happened, so hopefully it doesn't have long-term effects. Reaching out, offering support to the family. You never know the ripple effect when you're out there doing as much good as you can. For example, not very long ago I met this woman, Catherine Avery. She lives in Golden, Colorado, just outside of Denver. So 2 years ago, this Christmas, December 20th, her and her husband, they were baking for Christmas and everything. Ran out of a couple ingredients. He was just going to run down to the store, come back in 10 minutes, pick up vanilla, whatever they needed. So he's not back after an hour and a half, 2 hours. She's in a panic. She's calling all around. Eventually, she finds out that on his way home, the police got involved in a high-speed pursuit of 3 bank robbers. And the bank robbers ran a red light, T-boned her husband, killed him on the spot. So these officers were so compassionate to her. They didn't have to do anything. They notified her. They did whatever they needed to do. They could have just moved on, like usually happens. But they would do things like bring her food. They would drive by her home at night, this for months, and flash their lights in her window just to let her know, we're thinking about you, we're out here, you know. They're just reaching out, they did all kinds of things for her. And because of that compassion, what she ended up doing, about 6 months earlier, her father died and left her an inheritance. So this woman ends up buying for $1.25 million, 40 acres up in the mountains above Denver, calls it a restoration ranch, where any peace officer, any first responder can go for free, anytime they want, to try to heal and recover from what they see. You never know the ripple effects, right, when you're out there serving people. I'm going to bypass that because we're a little short on time. I want to show you this video on resilience. This is about 5 minutes long. Gives you really specific, effective strategies on how to practice resilience every day.
Resilience is not a gift. It's something to be built and maintained over time. And just like physical fitness, we can build resilience and become more resilient and fit all the way around throughout the career if we focus on the need to manage the stress load in effective ways.
As a profession, we're equipping law enforcement officers with the ability to learn how to bounce back. They never forget that the key of resiliency lies with the fostering of hope, right? That's intentionally believing that there's good, even if in a moment you're the only good.
They have to be resilient. They have to be able to go work a child's death call and get back in that patrol car and go and have somebody find their dog and everything in between, right? So they have to be resilient, because if they're not, the job will eat them up.
The interesting thing about officer resilience is it's something that can be taught. But the officers that are resilient all have several things in common. They have good social support. They see hits to their career as challenges and not crises. They are able to feel appreciation for the things that they have in their life. In other words, they consciously look at the glass as being half full rather than half empty.
The other key piece of resiliency to me is intentionally training your mind. And that means intentionally finding ways to reframe your challenges. What if, I know this is a radical concept, but what if every challenging moment was happening for you? Was an opportunity for you to practice coping, for you to intentionally choose your character, for you to practice and engage resiliency? And what if every challenging thing that ever occurred to you allowed you to practice and build wisdom from it, to get a lesson from it, so that then you could help someone else who goes through the exact same thing? Because if you look at the challenges of life in that way, every difficult thing, every unfair thing, every horrible negative thing only shows up to make you better.
Shots fired. Study done at Mason College. I've got 1 minute. Start setting. Off or down.
Instead of being frustrated about this, crappy situation that I was dealt, I wanted to learn why it happened, what happened, could we have changed something, could there have been anything different? I became very proactive with that. I think that helped me cope with a lot of it, but it was very much a mindset for me. There's a silver lining in everything, and you just have to find it, and that was really what my goal was to find the silver lining.
And to me, the key of that is your mindset, your outlook, what you believe, and what you look for. Because as we all know, whatever you seek, you will find.
So some of these adverse experiences that I've had, whether it was in childhood or throughout my career, Marine Corps experiences, combat experiences, that slow, steady drip of traumatic experiences in law enforcement. After seeking counseling and getting some treatment for some of these things that I was experiencing, I think one of the biggest takeaways for me was I learned how to harness those, for lack of a better term, bad experiences, and use that as motivation to do good and to come out better and stronger and respond to things that I was experiencing in the now with an advantage, because I had gone through some terrible things before. I was a high school wrestler. I did martial arts growing up. I was in jiu-jitsu, judo. And one of the principles is using your opponent's momentum against them, right? And taking the energy that they're putting in to the fight and then flipping it around on them. And I think through my treatment and my experiences, I've kind of recognized that I could do good with the bad things that are happening, and constantly trying to use the momentum of a bad experience and flip it around on itself and make it a positive.
So that's at the heart of resilience. If we can do that, if we can teach that to our colleagues and our people, we're going to be far more effective in the mission and taking care of people and being healthy and well. I can do good with the bad things that are happening. As I said, there's over 40 wellness strategies. We're going to go over about 10 or so. We might just skip a couple because I really want to make sure we hit EMDR in some detail. But here's just one that we can practice daily. If you think about it, we're making decisions all day long. Just most of us aren't even aware we have a decision to make because we're creatures of habit. And we have these routines that just kind of carry us through the day. But every single thing you guys do all day long, you could have done something else. You could have done a lot of other things. So if we can learn, when you're about to do something or make a decision, to kind of take a step back and be an observer and kind of look at all your other options. What could you do in this moment? And evaluate your options, looking for the one that's the most compassionate and the most life-affirming for you. And if we can consistently do the most compassionate, the most helpful, the most useful, the most meaningful, the most good, the most life-affirming, that which is actually going to enhance your sense of peace instead of erode it. That's what's going to enhance your sense of fulfillment, your joy, and all of that, instead of take it away. Then that's going to be productive of wellness and resilience every time. But that just takes, again, that awareness that we talked about earlier. Being aware and making that conscious decision of what to do. It's going to foster greater resilience. Has anyone ever heard of Viktor Frankl or read Man's Search for Meaning? You guys get something out of it? Get something out? I have never heard of anyone that read Man's Search for Meaning and said, I really didn't get much out of that. It's a powerful, powerful book that can change your life. So I can't recommend it strongly enough. Do yourself a favor, get a copy of Man's Search for Meaning. You only have to read the first half. It's in 2 parts. Second half just deals with psychology and stuff. You don't have to read that unless that's your interest. That first 100 pages or so can really change your life. So Frankl was a well-known psychiatrist in Austria in the 1930s. He had a successful practice, was wealthy, married, everything going well in his life until Nazi Germany annexed Austria. And one thing led to another. World War II started shortly after that. And Frankl and his wife got swept up by the Nazis and put in death camps, concentration camps, slave labor camps, where his wife died. Frankl spent 4 or 5 years in these slave labor and death camps and survived. Experiencing horrific suffering and barbarity and cruelty that we can't even begin to imagine. And this guy made it. He survived. Including Auschwitz. One of the camps he was in was Auschwitz. Almost nobody ever got out of Auschwitz. The Germans set that up to kill you as soon as you got there. If you're in really good shape, they might have siphoned you off to a slave labor detail that helped support the camp until you eventually got worked to death or you starved to death. But you weren't coming out of there. This guy did. And he came out of that experience with this one sentence. That your survival, your emotional well-being, is going to depend upon your ability to find meaning and purpose in life and work beyond your self-interests. It's just a simple sentence, but potentially life-changing. Your ability to survive, to be healthy, to be well, is going to, kind of like what Schweitzer said, is to be able to find meaning in life greater than your self-interest, being helpful and useful. He writes in Man's Search for Meaning that those very few prisoners that tended to survive these death camps were the ones that somehow within themselves were able to find some kind of purpose in that suffering. The ones that would do things like give their one piece of bread they were given a day to live on to another prisoner that was starving to death more than they were. Or maybe the ones at nighttime, instead of trying to get an hour or two of rest, would go around the bunks and try and comfort some of the other prisoners that were slowly dying. He said those are the ones that tended to make it. They had a reason to be there beyond themselves. So if what we're sharing tonight can help somebody survive a place like Auschwitz, it can help you survive a career in your agency. You just have to remember these principles and practice them daily. All right, so we already talked about becoming more and more self-aware, asking yourself, asking your life partner maybe how you may have changed over the previous year or so. Anyone have a magic chair at home? Magic sofa? Like the first place you go to after a 10, 12, 16-hour shift? So the problem with that is, look at this guy. How hard do you think it's going to be to get him to get up and do anything? He's not going anywhere. And your families are going to learn really fast. They're not stupid. Right? They're going to know as soon as mom or dad come home, he's in his chair. Come on, kids, let's just go get something to eat. We'll bring home something for dinner. And they'll just kind of go off and start doing things on their own. They'll leave you alone. They'll end up enabling your isolation, your disengagement, your detachment, your lack of involvement, and all of that. There's nothing wrong with coming home and letting everyone know, leave me alone. For like 15, 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes. And make sure it's only 20, 30 minutes. And come back out and re-engage the family, reconnect with them. Often those 15, 20 minutes can end up being 12 hours, and then you're back at work, and now it's a habit. That's all you do, primarily, when you're off duty. I always tell people, think about your time off before you actually have time off or your days off. Actually write down what you want to do. Because when you write it down and you're looking at that during the work week, you're much more likely to actually follow through and do it. Keep yourself, sometimes you have to force yourself to stay active and connected to people. All right. Don't quite have time for that video, but I'm going to incorporate some stuff as we move on. So some of these things we've already talked about, so we don't need to spend any time on it. I want to talk about number 4 here. Think about the 1 or 2 most stressful things in your life. Whatever they might be at work, might be at home, whatever. And while you're thinking about those stressful things, is there anything that you can just kind of magically do to make that go away? Probably not, or you would have already done it, and it wouldn't be a stressor for you. So many of us waste so much precious energy fighting and resisting reality, fighting and resisting life, things that you can't control no matter what you do. And I guess it's human nature, but those things will tend to eat you alive the more energy you give to them by thinking about it, worrying about it, and stressing about it. I can only think about 4 or 5 things that you have absolute control over. And the more that you can catch yourself, again, being more self-aware, being worried about something, and you just say, okay, in this moment right now, can I do anything about that? It's probably going to be no. And that's, with that realization, that can help you kind of let it go and move on. If there is something you can do, then you do it. So you're actually doing something instead of letting it react against you. So what can you control? You got complete control over the kind of person you are, right? Your integrity, your character, your compassion, how much good you're willing to do day in and day out. You got control over your attitude, whether it's positive and constructive or negative. You got control over how you choose to respond to somebody. Right? Just because they're an idiot doesn't mean you have to be. Right? You got complete control over how you choose to respond to a situation, to a challenge, to trauma, to a crisis. You've got control over what you eat and maybe how you spend your free time, unless you're married. That's about it. Right? 4 or 5 things. The less stress your brain is, right, by just controlling those 4 or 5 things, the more capable it will be to deal with the more severe traumas when they happen. One of the main pillars of emotional wellness and resilience is to always be growing, always working towards self-improvement. Part of spiritual wellness is to have ideals, having some ideal that you're trying to embody or become or work towards, personally and professionally. And not always trying to learn and grow and improve and become more effective, but also, more importantly, passing on what you know, right? Being useful and helping people from what you have learned. Learning to let go, right? We talked about that, but mindfulness, one of the main areas to maintain your mental resilience, the practice of mindfulness and being present. Most people are often just stuck in the past, or they're worried about the future. Right? And when you're not just totally invested in what's right before you right now, moment to moment, you're robbing yourself of the opportunity to make the present moment both meaningful and productive of wellness for you. If you think about it, pretty much all anger, all hurt feelings, all regret, all guilt, all shame, depression, on and on, is all about stuff that's already happened. And you're keeping alive that energy you're putting into it by dwelling in it. All worry and stress and anxiety, that's all about stuff that's in the future. That you're letting it suck energy out of you by being stressed about it. By being more self-aware, you can catch yourself dwelling on stuff in the past or being worried about something. Just, okay, can I do something right now about that? No, all right. So, what can I do? Just, like right now, You're not dealing with a divorce from 5 years ago, or what happened to you as a kid, or whatever. You're not paying your mortgage, which isn't due for 2 more weeks, and you don't know where the money's going to come from. You're just sitting in an auditorium listening to some guy talk. And hopefully trying to get what you can that's going to be most helpful and meaningful for you. That's being present, totally focused, aware of what's going on, and making the most of what's before you. All right, EMDR.
Well, what a lot of officers say is, I didn't know how much better I could feel.
I really wish that I had had the opportunity to be introduced to EMDR earlier in my career, and the way I would have handled it is I would have done it regularly.
In one session of EMDR, I felt like a new man.
And the way that I like to explain EMDR in a nutshell is it's eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. Big words. All it means is we are attempting to replicate REM sleep while you're awake and focused on the image or the memory that is particularly irritating your system. And in REM sleep, what our system organically does is sort of reboot the system and file this data without the disruption and without the stress. That's in its simplest form. And so what happens in an EMDR session is we focus on that information or that memory or that incident, and we process it, and the brain will get whatever is related to it and file it in a place that doesn't create the stress symptoms. And what we find is that the flashbacks, the hypervigilance, the tightness in the chest, all of these things reduce. And it seems a little crazy, you're waving a wand and, or you're following some lights, but really it's about rebooting the system so that it can get jump-started to do what it knows how to do.
So having gone through therapy and having practiced EMDR, some of the results that I've seen personally are I've been sleeping consistently. My quality of sleep has gone up. My patience has improved dramatically. I just feel much more clear-minded. My decision-making process has improved.
So to me, it only makes sense that if we go through something, we go through a pattern, a period of time when we had some rough calls, we ought to be doing some maintenance. We ought to be going and getting some EMDR. It's half an hour of your time. It helps you file that stuff and separate the emotional piece and make sense out of it. And it really puts you in a position to be able to then go forward with some resiliency emotionally and everything else so that you can be productive and make good decisions. It just makes sense to me.
Right, so that's EMDR. So it's been around for over 30 years. It's not hypnosis. You saw her moving a wand back and forth. I'll talk about in a second about why they do that. Very, very powerful in just relatively few sessions to take care of even the most severe traumas. But almost nobody knows about it. That's because we don't talk in this profession. That's something we got to change, at least within our workplace, in our agency. So, remember I told you when you're in REM sleep, that's when the processing part of your brain that can be injured by trauma is most active and doing its job, trying to deal with these things and file them away without all the distress. Okay, so REM sleep stands for rapid eye movement, right? REM. If you ever watch somebody sleeping really deeply, if they were in REM sleep, you might have noticed their eyelids kind of twitching or fluttering back and forth. It looks a little weird. That's just because when that part of your brain is most active and doing its job during REM sleep, your eyes will tend to just move involuntarily. Just because they're connected for whatever reason, again, that's how God wires us up. When one is moving or active, the other one is moving or active. So they try to replicate REM sleep while you're awake by doing something during the session to have your eyes move back and forth. That's why she was moving the wand. You just trace and follow with your eyes as a way to get access to and get into that processing part of your brain without having to go to sleep. So they might use a wand, they might have a light bar that just kind of flashes lights alternatively. You just kind of follow with your eyes back and forth. A session takes about an hour and a half. or so, usually not longer than that. It's very exhausting. Probably gonna feel like you got run over by a truck when you're done. But that's part of the healing process and the releasement of all the tension and pressure and stress and traumas. Then you recover after a day or two. And just like that one officer said, like right away, I'm sleeping better. All these other benefits he was talking about. That one chaplain said, one session at EMDR, I felt like a new man. I hear things like that all the time. I've never heard one negative thing about EMDR. The most negative thing I ever heard was somebody said, I didn't think it was very effective. I asked, well, how many times did you go? Once. What do you expect, right? What I hear consistently is things like, it's the best thing I've ever done. It saved my life. I should have done it years ago. I wish I knew about this in the beginning of my career. I never knew I could feel this good again. All the time I hear that, but very few people know about it. How it worked with me was, and by the way, it's just as effective, even if you can't point to an incident that you know is causing your symptoms. Because sometimes the effects of trauma can be delayed so long, you don't know why your life is out of control. It's still just as effective. In that case, you would be talking about your symptoms and things instead of a particular incident, but they can still help your brain work through it and reboot your system so you can recover and heal from that. But with me, there was a particular incident. So she said, okay, think of, you're right there, you're dealing with that all over again. You're right in the middle of it. How bad does that bother you on a scale of 1 to 10? I told her, well, I'm really thinking about it. It's about a 7 or 8. So I went through the session, left, came back a week later, went through another one. And at the end of the second one, she said, okay, you're dealing with this all over again. You're right in the middle of it. It's all happening all over. How bad is that bothering you? And immediately I said, about a 1 or 2. Once that happens, it's not going to be an 8, 9, or 10 next week or next month or next year. The brain has dealt with it. You might have other issues or problems, but it's not going to be that one. And they can just take one trauma after the other, and they'll keep working with one until it kind of gets resolved. Then they can work with something else. Maybe something happened to you as a kid. Okay, let's resolve that. Maybe that'll take 5 or 6 sessions or whatever. And then they can work on something. They just untangle. Sometimes people's traumas are so complicated and layered, trauma after trauma after trauma. It takes a while. Sometimes it's just one thing. But this will help get somebody through it more than anything else, in my opinion, by far. A short story about this. But by the way, let me back up. Here's the scientific evidence behind it. That brain scan on the left, with all that red, there really shouldn't be any red there. That's parts of the brain overacting, doing things it really shouldn't be doing. The brain scan on the right is the very same person after only 4 90-minute sessions of EMDR. That is a dramatic physiological healing and repair and restoration after just 4 sessions. So that's the scientific proof of how effective this is. So to find somebody in your area, if you go to EMDR-IA, IA just stands for International Association, EMDRIA.org. You can type in Grand Rapids. You used to be able to, I think you still can, type in even your insurance. And it'll bring up every EMDR trauma professional in the Grand Rapids area who takes that insurance. Since there are several trauma professionals who aren't part of that association, who are EMDR certified, you will also want to just Google EMDR trauma professional Grand Rapids, and a bunch more will pop up. Then just call a few and vet them. Hey, you got experience with first responders, with frontline workers. How many years you've been doing that, right? And that's who you want to go to when you have some stuff bothering you. That's who you want to go to once a year as a form of maintenance and prevention. That's who you want to recommend to people when you notice a colleague not quite themselves. So last story about EMDR, just to kind of cement how effective this is. This officer's story is in the book. St. Angle PD officer got involved in a fatal shooting, and for months and months and months afterwards, he kept seeing blood everywhere, including all over his 5-year-old son's face with a bullet hole in his kid's head. Every time he looked at his son, went into his bedroom to kiss him goodnight, looked at him across the dinner table. He sees a bullet hole in his kid's head and his whole head drenched in blood and bleeding out. For months. What do you think that would do? You probably all have kids, been around kids, nieces and nephews or things. Imagine them at 5 years old, and every time you looked at them for months, your brain was saying they're dying. They're bleeding to death. Why are you just standing there? Why aren't you doing it? They're dying. Do something. That'd be a little upsetting, right? He'd see himself standing in a pool of blood every time he took a shower. He'd see blood smeared on the dinner table, in his food sometimes. Sometimes he'd look at his wife sleeping, and on the sheet underneath her head is this little blood spot. And while he looked at her, it just got bigger and bigger, saturating the sheets like she's bleeding out. And he said he kept seeing his hands covered in blood for months. And he started doing this, and he made a face, and he goes, I could even feel the stickiness of it. And I'd wash my hands over and over and over again. And they're still covered in blood. I could still feel it. I couldn't make that go away. If that's your reality, you're going to think you're losing your mind, right? He didn't want to talk to his wife about it, didn't want her to think he's nuts. Just kind of suffered in silence, hoping he could outlast it, hoping it would get better. Trauma doesn't just get better on its own, usually. He's getting more and more depressed. He eventually was getting suicidal. Now, you could not live like that for the rest of your life. But thank God he confided in a San Diego peer support officer. Someone he knew had been in a shooting years ago. He wanted to know if he started seeing weird stuff after his shooting. And this officer tells him about EMDR. He had never heard about it before. And he used this to convince him to go. I think it's a really good way to talk to somebody, talk them into it. He said, hey, there is something out there that's been around for decades that can really help you get through this and make it go away. Just go 3 times. Commit to going 3 times. Give it a chance. After the 3rd session, you can evaluate it to see if you want to keep going, to see if it's doing any good or not. Just go 3 times. It won't make your symptoms worse. And he said, that convinced me. You know, I can go 3 times, especially if it's not going to make me worse. I'm already thinking about killing myself. So this officer tells me after the 2nd session, he never went back. He said, I have never seen phantom blood again. And a couple of years had passed since his treatment. That's pretty powerful. It's a little unusual, going a couple, but it happens. I've heard that. It happened with me. I've heard it from other people. Sometimes maybe someone said I had to go about 10 times. I had to go a dozen times or so. That's not going to talk therapy every week for 3 years. That's why it's so good for people in our profession. It's something that they can do because they're going to see some concrete results, more likely than not, pretty quickly. Does anyone have any questions about EMDR? Yes?
Conversation that you're having, or is it just a light? Are you there to have a conversation with somebody, or is it a light?
Good question. So once they have your eyes moving back and forth, there's a very, very specific, kind of concentrated way the trauma professional has you talk about either your symptoms or your experience in that safe place where that processing part is most active, where it can now deal with it with some conscious attention, with you evaluating everything and looking at stuff. And it's a way, they know where they want to lead you. So it's like the open questions and the stuff that they ask to kind of get you to have your brain kind of figure it out on its own. That's kind of the best way I can explain it. And it's the way, because the brain has just been kind of stuck and frozen and holding on to all of these distressing thoughts and emotions. Once you kind of figure it out, all that stuff kind of gets released. So all you have is just the memory. Any other questions about EMDR? Yes?
Can you speak to, is there any evidence of success with EMDR with youth, or is this an adult?
With what?
For youth.
Youth. I don't know. Personally, I've read that it's just as effective pretty much for anyone. I know that they do it a lot. There's a specialty within it for kids who have been molested, who have been badly abused. Well, there's still kids, not grown up trying to deal with it. It's effective for anybody who has dealt with trauma. You don't have to be a first responder or a frontline worker. And as long as you're able to communicate and think about stuff, if you're old enough to do that, and concentrate and focus, it'll be helpful. Any other questions about EMDR? It's not just saving lives, careers, it's saving lives. So help get the word out to your agency. If your agency has an EAP program where your people can go to psychologists for a certain number for free, paid for by the city or the county, look into it and see if any of them are EMDR certified. Because most EAPs have general psychologists. And general psychologists are really good for general problems, right? Marriage and family problems, or people suffering loss or grief or other issues with daily life. But trauma is kind of a specialty. Like, you're not going to go to your regular family practitioner or doctor and say, hey doc, now that I'm in here getting my flu shot, you want to just replace my knee? No, you're going to go to an expert, right? But that's all they do is work on needs. Trauma is kind of the same way. You need an expert, in my opinion, to most effectively deal with it. I mean, general psychologists can be really good with it too. But it's like not just being a doctor, being a surgeon, right? Having that extra training and expertise. All right. So I only have about 5 minutes left, so I want to wrap up with this. So we're talking about mental fitness and the practice of mindfulness and being present as one practice daily for that. The other is meditation. Does anyone in here meditate regularly? One? So I've been meditating for over 35 years, kind of how I was brought up. So I can tell you guys, probably the best gift you could ever give yourself is to develop a daily habit of meditation. People have been meditating for thousands of years, so there's a ton of science behind it and what it does for you. You only have to do 5 to 10 minutes. I like to do it in the morning before I get out of bed to kind of lay the foundation for the day. But just 5 to 10 minutes has proven effects that will last all day long. To help keep you more centered, more calm, more able to respond to stress and traumas and to calm down more quickly afterwards. Just to be more mindful and present throughout the day. Just all kinds of benefits. A lot of people think meditation means clearing your mind of everything. Right? So that's impossible. Because they try and do that, they figure out they can't do that, so they say, I tried meditating, it doesn't work for me. That's not meditation. I'm going to put you through a mindfulness meditation in just a second, just for about 1.5 minutes, so you guys can see what it is. But this mindfulness meditation comes out of heart math. Has anyone ever heard of heart math? A few of you? I've been further training. It's really effective. Probably the only good thing that's ever come out of San Francisco. Heart math. So they're a scientific research institution that's been around for over 20 years, and their whole purpose is to develop ways for us to self-regulate and to respond to stress and to calm down and to recover. They even develop apps and things you can see in real time, your heart rate coming down, your breathing, and your blood pressure and all that. So this graph in red, that's somebody's heart rate when they are stressed out and frustrated. Your heart is tremendously powerful. They've measured the energy of your brain versus your heart, and your heart, the energy of it is 4 times more than your brain. More information goes from your heart to your brain than from your brain to your heart. Think about all your heart does. It is your wellspring of your motivation in life, your inspiration, your capacity to love, to be helpful, to be kind and useful, to heal. If your heart is doing this, you are all screwed up. There is no way you're making good, clear, sound decisions. That line in blue on the bottom, that is the very same person after only 3 minutes of doing what we're about to do. Their heart went from this to this. And that's what they call coherence. When your brain, your central nervous system, your heart, your body are all working together for your optimal functionality, for your highest Good. So we're going to go through a couple stages. I'll walk you through. Just be a minute and a half or so. So just sit however you're comfortable. Close your eyes. You want to keep your eyes closed because that keeps out all distractions. While you're sitting there with your eyes closed, the first stage is just to start breathing slow and deep. There's a lot of science behind how you breathe to be most effective. So breathe in through your nose. Hold it for as long as you can, and then much more slowly exhale out of your mouth. So big breath in through your nose. Feel the air going in your nose, down the back of your throat. Feel your lungs expanding. Hold it there as long as you can, and slowly, slowly exhale from your mouth. Just keep doing that. While you continue to take slow, deep breaths, now focus on your heart. Try to feel your heartbeat. Try to feel appreciation for your heart and everything it does for you. Connect with it while you're breathing slow and deep. While you continue to do both of those things, the last thing we're going to add, keep doing those things. Now think of just one thing that evokes a very strong, powerful emotion of either love or gratitude or peace. Maybe think of your kids when they were little. Think of someone or something you love very dearly or are very grateful for. Or think of a very peaceful place you can envision yourself at. Just one thing. Where you're focused on your heart, feeling gratitude, and breathing slowly and deeply. Right, so you can slowly start to come out of that. So what'd that feel like? Is that peaceful? Were you thinking about the work stacking up on your desk while you're in here tonight? Probably not. So that was just 2 minutes. I always tell people, just try this meditation before you get out of bed for 5 minutes. Every morning for 1 week. If you don't feel any benefit from it, don't do it again. But you're probably going to start feeling a little more peace, a little more calm. And then be creative with it. Don't always think of the same thing. Sometimes I'll think of a problem. You're breathing slow and deep and connected with your heart and everything. And how can I get through this crisis? What can I do about it? You just kind of sit there in silence. Meditation is a way to open the door to your intuition. And you're going to get ideas and insights that you are never going to hear during the noise of everyday life. So just be creative about it. Headspace.com used to be a free app. I think it still is. If you've never meditated before, it kind of help you through it. It has some music for guided meditations and just all kinds of stuff. Like I said, just try it and see what benefit you get out of it. All right, so our last thing as we wrap up here, another daily practice. This was developed by Yale University by their psychiatrists and psychologists, so there's a ton of science and research all behind it. 5 simple things you have complete control over that we can practice daily that are guaranteed to build resilience and overall wellness. Practicing being more grateful. One of the doctors in the video said that people who are resilient, they see the glass that's half full, not half empty. They're aware of all the good in their life. They're not just focused on all the bad and the dark. Not just being more aware of all the good, but being able to express gratitude will also help heal and nurture relationships, help connect you with people and relate to them. At least once a year, usually around Thanksgiving, I'll sit down and write a list of everything I can think of my whole life to be grateful for. Usually multiple pages. Or maybe for a week, you can just come home from work and write 3 things to be grateful for. Just as a little practice to help turn your mind around from all the dark, negative, that's such a part of our profession, and be more focused on the good. Practice being more positive. Often, people in our profession have no idea how negative they have become. Cops tend to be the most negative people I've ever seen in my whole life. The most cynical. They're doing the best job, the greatest job, what can be the most fun job in the whole world. And they're angry, bitter, negative, and cynical. You can turn that around by being aware when you are being negative and replacing that with something that's positive. Thinking, speaking, and believing in positive terms. If you want to just test yourself, make sure it's a work day, so you're challenged. And try to make a little mark for every time you catch yourself thinking or saying something negative. It's probably going to fill up a page or 2. Right? And you've all been around really, really negative people, right? What's it feel like when you walk away? They just suck the life out of you, right? They just vampired your neck. Right? Negativity drains energy and motivation and inspiration and everything else. Being positive does the exact opposite. It draws energy and all that. Remain active and engaged with life, especially out in nature. A ton of evidence behind what nature can do for you to re-energize you, to restore your peace, your sense of well-being and connectedness, and all of that. Practice being mindful moment to moment, not being in the past or worried about the future, just being totally present. Have a purpose in life beyond your self-interest, what we talked about with Viktor Frankl. And you guys have the greatest opportunity to fulfill a purpose by what you do day in and day out in serving people and protecting life. Being the good amidst all the bad. Because ultimately, I would probably think most of us, at the end of your career, would probably like to be with someone in a healthy relationship, not in your 5th marriage, right? Feeling really good about all the good you're able to do, all the lives you're affected throughout your whole career. Being healthy, being able to look forward to the next 30 plus years of your life. You can help make that happen by what you do from this moment forward. And practicing wellness and resilience every day. So as we wrap up here, if you have any questions, we're going to open up for questions, but I just want to thank you guys for being willing to sacrifice a part of yourself to keep us safe, for all the good that you guys do. So thank you, and please take this stuff seriously and get the very most that you can out of these great honored professions.